Okay, you can begin.
Well, good day, sir, again. Good day, everyone in the class. Myself, Ethan Batiste, Denicia Phipps, and Aisha Harry would be presenting on chapter 5, which would be titled Understanding Others. So, in the chapter presented before, which was Understanding Yourselves, you got a deeper understanding, well, about yourself, how to know yourself better and those kinds of stuff. So now we'll be taking you all through how to understand others deeply. So first things first, basically, this chapter is mainly focused on understanding gender, ethnicity, and culture in fostering inclusive and empowering leadership, right? We would also be explaining how diversity would shape this culture, this leadership, with processes like communication, conflict resolution, and decision making. And to round everything all off, we would be emphasizing some key communication skills, which would be empathy and assertiveness, which would also be essential for effective leadership. So, first and foremost, I will be talking you all through individuality and commonality. So, basically, right, um, people are different, right? People are different among us, right? Whether it be based on gender, ethnicity, culture, values, or personal preferences, right? Everybody could agree with me on this, right? Everybody is a different kind of person. We may have some kind of similarities, but more or less different, right? Um, while the individual may appear or seem different on the surface, we do share some underlying human experiences and desires in our human genome, right? So, in group settings, right? Picture yourself in a group setting. It's easy to identify differences among people, as I just mentioned, right? Like physical characteristics, may it be race, gender, or age, right? Or sometimes some visible symbols, right, of identity. This can be like a wedding ring, religious symbols, or sorority pins. These differences, right, can initially make people seem dissimilar, but over time, deeper commonalities begin to emerge. So I'll give you all like a short example, right? Two people might come from different cultural backgrounds, but they could share similar political views, goals for academic success, or lifestyle habits like exercising regularly, right? To dive deeper into this example, right? Imagine yourself in a university classroom. So, like this, right? We're in a university classroom. The students are from various ethnic backgrounds, genders, and ages. At first, right, these differences may seem significant. However, as us students discuss our reasons for taking the class, whether it may be to improve our skills, pursue a major, or work towards a future career, we begin to realize that we share similar aspirations. This realization could help us connect on a deeper level, leading to a sense of we within the classroom despite our initial perceptions of differences. So, on a leadership standpoint, leaders in diverse groups would face challenges, in bringing people together with different perspectives and experiences to work towards a common goal, right? Because in a group, you normally have a common goal and there is normally a leader. So, this would involve finding a shared purpose that can unify the group or help individuals, move from a focus on I to we, right? So an example for this, right, we can take the same student group, right? But this time we want to change university policies on library hours, right? So we're a group of students and we want to change the university policies on library hours. This group would include students, obviously, from different majors, backgrounds, and experiences. Initially, they might approach the problem of changing the library hours from different angles. Some students might focus on the academic benefits of it, while others might emphasize how it impacts their work-life balance. A strong leader, right, in this situation would work to find a common purpose, helping everybody see their individual concerns and align the shared goal of changing the policy. So, if we were to build community through understanding and pluralistic leadership, right, to create a true sense of community, individuals need to let go of self centeredness and focus on understanding others. Philosophers Martin Buber's concept of I though, right? It encourages deep, meaningful relationships that transcend surface level differences, while leadership educators, right, they would advocate a progression from I to you to we, getting out of the habit of thinking about you by yourself to thinking about working as one. This process would involve moving from an individualistic mindset to one of inclusivity and collaboration. It's very essential, right, that individuals understand themselves well enough, right? So, case in point, the previous chapter, understanding oneself, right, to modify their behavior and connect with others genuinely. By doing so, diverse groups can form strong coalitions that work together towards common goals. I'll give you all one more example, right? So everybody's done group projects, right? Everybody's have like group assignments to do together, right? And more than likely you have team members with very different working styles. Some might prefer detailed planning, while others might be more spontaneous. Sometimes tensions can arise, right? However, by recognizing these differences as strengths rather than obstacles, your group could learn to communicate effectively and distribute the tasks according to each member's strength. This kind of pluralistic leadership allows the group to appreciate diversity and work together harmoniously. So, I'll give you all like some recommendations for building a great community for working together, right? Emphasize shared goals, right? In any group, identify the common purpose that unites the members, whether it may be academic success, mutual interests, or stuff like that. Encourage an open communication. Appreciate diversity. Rather than viewing differences as challenges, embrace them as opportunities. This would enrich group discussions and solutions. Develop a self awareness. Individuals should really reflect on how their behaviors and attitudes affect group dynamics. And lastly, foster some inclusive leadership. So, this is for like leaders, right? Leaders should practice pluralistic leadership by actively seeking out and valuing the contributions of all the group members, ensuring that no one is overlooked. So, now I'll take you all to talking about gender diversity. So we're still talking about leadership and building communities and stuff, but now we have to talk about the gender diversity part of this. Right, right. So this is mainly focused on two things, right? Gender roles and sex roles. Sex roles being some biological differences like pregnancy or social or muscle mass, and gender roles, which are socially constructed expectations about what behaviors are considered masculine or feminine. So, for example, right? Like, well, for me, examples make everything easier, right? Examples give you like a greater understanding of what somebody might be talking about, right? So, everybody could agree only women can biologically bear children, right? But this doesn't mean that only women can nurture children. Historically, nurturing has been labeled a feminine trait, which limited men's involvement in child rearing. Similarly, sports like rugby or football are all seen as masculine because they require physical contact, which has made it harder for women to participate. Even though, right? Even though women can be athletic and can do these kinds of things. So people who don't fit into these traditional gender roles, right? Like a man who is nurturing or a woman who is non-athletic, they can face some discrimination because they don't conform to societal expectations. And that's kind of what society has put on us these days, an expectation of how a man's supposed to be and a woman's supposed to be, right? So in leadership, right? The traditional view often assumes that leaders should be decisive, they should be competitive, they should be self reliant. These traits are all seen to be masculine, right? Based on societal expectations. So it's a stereotype, right? And this stereotype excludes many capable women because there are many great leaders who are women, right? From childhood, we were socialized to see leadership in this way. That's how leadership was portrayed to us. That's how it was given to us. So we grew up seeing it this way. Boys often engage in competitive, aggressive games like sports or video games where there are winners and there are losers. These activities reinforce traits like dominance and independence, while often valued in leadership. Girls, on the other hand, tend to play more cooperative, relationship based games like playing house or jump rope, where the focus is on social bonding rather than competition. This can lead to women valuing relationships and consensus in their adult lives, while men may prioritize independence and status, right? So, men and women, they attribute success and failure differently, right? Women would credit external factors like luck or help from others, while men like to credit internal factors like skill or preparation for their success, and they blame external factors for failures. These different ways of thinking can impact how men and women view themselves in leadership roles. So, this so all in all, right, despite all these general patterns, right, both men and women are capable of making great decisions, leading effectively, and communicating clearly, even though they may approach these tasks in different ways. The reason we continue to observe differences between men and women often comes from the power dynamics in society, right? How we were brought up, the things we were introduced to, where men's traits and behaviors have historically been given a higher status. A man has traditionally held more visible leadership positions. The qualities they exhibit are often seen as the standard for leadership, right? Well, women can do all these things too, right? So, because of this, right, some recommendations to take for this to think about gender diversity a little more, right? Challenge the gender stereotypes. Those societal norms that everybody talk about, challenge them. Whether in leadership, parenting, or play, society should move beyond traditional gender roles that limit both men and women. They should encourage environments where men can step out of their comfort zone, women can step out of the comfort zone. We should also promote inclusive leadership styles, recognize that leadership can take many forms, and value traits like collaboration, emotional intelligence, and consensus building. Encourage diverse attributions of success and foster early socialization changes. So, from childhood, right? Promote a wider range of play experiences that emphasize both competition and cooperation for all genders. And last thing I'll be talking to you guys to about today would be the cultural parts of leadership and communities and stuff like that. Understanding cultural diversity. So culture, right? It can shape the way groups of people think, feel, and behave, right? Culture can be described as the collective patterns of living, including values, beliefs, norms, and communication styles. Culture isn't fixed though. It's constantly evolving as people interact with one another, right? Effective leaders, they must recognize and appreciate the different cultures within their group. This would help build inclusiveness, collaboration, and shared goals. To do this, though, the leader themselves must be aware of their own cultural assumptions, which can be unconscious biases or beliefs that shape how they see the world. So, while culture, right, is often, or culture in this world is often discussed in terms of race and ethnicity, I want to warn us, though, to be very cautious of the concept of race, right? Don't use it sparingly and stuff like that. Because historically, race has been used to classify people based on physical characteristics. But research shows that race has no biological foundation. Yet, despite race being a social construct, it still plays a powerful role in shaping life experiences and opportunities. For example, in the US, right? In the US, race has been used to marginalize certain groups. And racism is a big thing. It continues to impact students on college campuses today. Even though race isn't based in biology and stuff like that, the social and political effects of racial classifications, they are real and they are out there. They influence everything from job opportunities to daily interactions. So another concept I want to introduce you to is privilege, right? Specifically white privilege. So white privilege are advantages that white people experience in society that often go unnoticed. For example, a white person can go shopping without being followed by security, or find housing without facing discrimination based on race. Similarly, though, people with other forms of privilege, like being male, heterosexual, able bodied, or financially stable, they could unconsciously benefit from societal advantages. You might be wondering, right? Why am I telling you all these things? So, to be an effective leader, right, one must recognize these privileges, right? The privileges that they hold and how these privileges influence their expectations of leadership. For example, if we unconsciously associate leadership with being decisive, assertive, or confident, traits commonly tied to masculinity in many cultures, we may overlook people who lead with different but equally valuable traits like collaboration or empathy. So I'll leave you all with one last recommendation, right? Increase cultural awareness. This would help in increasing cultural diversity among groups, among us in general. Leaders, right, they should reflect on their own cultural assumptions and privilege. Embrace multiculturalism. We live in a country where we have a lot of different cultures, right? Multiculturalism is big in our country. Encourage diverse perspectives within your own group. This can lead to more innovative solutions and help create a more cohesive team. Recognize and address these kinds of privileges, whether it be race, gender, or any other form of privilege. Leaders should be conscious of how these advantages can affect their interactions and leadership styles. So, last example, right? If you're in a position of privilege, be mindful of how your experience might differ from those who don't share that same privilege, and work to include and support them. And lastly, promote inclusive leadership. Leadership doesn't always have to be about who's the most loudest or who's the most assertive. Effective leaders should value empathy, collaboration, and humility, and recognize that leadership can take many forms across many different cultures and many different communities. I would now pass you on to my groupmates, Denicia Phipps.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be discussing with you a few next subtopics of this presentation. So, since we have already touched on cultural diversity and gender diversity, we're going to now introduce international diversity. And that is where you have to learn and understand how to work with persons from different countries, different cities, different neighborhoods, because this can be a very challenging but a very exciting experience. And one of the greatest opportunities you can actually get to do this is through college, where you can interact and work with international students, or you can study abroad and learn about their cultures. But it's not actually just limited to college, because you can simply do this by just being online, say in a small gaming community, an art community, or just small social circles, because you can now make friends from different countries across the world. You get to know them, you get to know their cultures, their holidays, their food, their music, stuff like that. So it's not really just limited to college. Now, knowledge for success. Javidian and House, these researchers state that managers need to understand cultural differences and develop skills for culturally sensitive decisions. Now, say you have a business in country A and you want to move it to country B. Now, if you don't know anything about countries B's culture, the stuff that they do, now your business really won't go anywhere, or it might, just like, let's say, a little bit. It won't get far. Now, once you've actually learned these people's cultures and what they do, your business goes further. And that's where we move to Kat De Veers and Florence Tracy. They stated that successful global leaders demonstrate adaptability, cultural empathy, and emotional intelligence. Now, Project Globe, which Globe stands for Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness. Now, this is a study made from thousands of middle managers, and this project describes culture as a set of shared values and beliefs. So the values will be people's aspiration about the way things should be done, and their beliefs are their perceptions, their perspective on how things are done in their countries. Now, this project, they studied 9 different dimensions of culture that differ from country to country. So we start with assertiveness, future orientation, gender differentiation, uncertainty avoidance, power distance, which is power expected to be shared unequally within the culture, institutional emphasis on collectivism versus individualism, and group collectivism, which is memberships in small groups, communities, and families, performance orientation, and humane orientation, which is fairness, generosity, caring, kindness, and those other attributes. Even though some countries seem to be higher than others in these dimensions, any attempt to generalize these large groups, information and research from this is to be viewed with caution, as it can, I'd say, from different countries to countries, sorry, you may not get the same results, you may not get the same answers as, say, a bigger country may not have all the information or all the statistics a smaller country may or may not have. Now, that being said, working with others from different nations and that they may differ from you, this can help you understand them better and work with them more effectively. Now, Rebecca Nathan actually, she went undercover as a freshman in a residential hall, and she discovered that the biggest complaint international students usually have against US students is that it's their ignorance. A lot of times, these US students have lack of information or misinformation about different countries and their cultures and the way that they would carry themselves or their views and their opinions on different things. Now we move on to the next topic that I'm going to talk about is your cultural heritage. Now, understanding your own cultural background helps in recognizing the values and the beliefs you carry. Study diverse cultures like African American culture, Latino culture, Hispanic cultures, Asian American cultures, Native American, and different international perspectives, because this can actually help you in, say, a case where you join a team. You can now, using your heritage and your background, you can actually give them a wider idea, a wider variety on what they can and can't do to implement into their business to expand. Now, the importance of the inclusion in leadership, effective leaders are open-minded and inclusive, valuing different perspectives. And this was actually said by Anne Milestone, and she is a dance teacher and a major in retailing and consumer scientist at the University of Arizona. Now, the last topic I will be talking about tonight is building multicultural appreciation. Now, multicultural openness. Effective leaders foster openness to diverse cultures and perspectives. Paul Henderson emphasizes on developing awareness, knowledge, and skill for multicultural environments. Now, Paul Henderson, he's an American psychologist. Well, unfortunately, he died in 2017. But he supports this idea that noting individual needs to develop these skills to be able to work effectively in a multicultural environment. Now, below us, there is a model, not model, sorry, a learning process model from David Hopes. He presents this model to describe how we develop and learn to communicate clearly and understand people and cultures that seem different from our own. Now we start with ethnocentrism, sorry. Then we move to awareness, understanding, acceptance, valuing, selective adoption, and multiculturalism. So we go to the first point, which is ethnocentrism. In this stage, we believe that our own culture is the way of doing things best. Sometimes we may even believe it's superior to others. And people with these kinds of views can be seen as intolerant or sometimes hostile to others from different countries and their cultures. Racism and sexism grows heavily from this base. And from there, we move on to awareness. Once we move out of ethnocentrism, our awareness is now raised. We begin to acknowledge that there are different cultures that exist around us. And from then on, now that we are aware, we move to some form of understanding. So we get this understanding from the different experience that we now deal with, and so forth. We can now learn these new information and knowledge. And learning about these cultures is somewhat objective in this transition, and in most cases is more thought about than felt. Now, these two transition stages of awareness and understanding leads to a willingness to accept and respect others that do have a legitimate cultural view. Though this tolerance is not led to one's own culture, an examination, of one's own culture, but to the recognition that it may be okay for others to hold the views and values that they may have, they may possess from their own cultural views. So some persons may say that accepting this is just, they may find this to be a negative thing, and this may lead to a civility of tolerance. It may divide others actually, but it does not place the same value of someone else above your own. But this doesn't actually mean that everything about someone else's culture or the way they do things is appreciated. It may not be right as well. But it can also be a recognition of their strengths, their assets, and their value for another cultural view that they may experience. So a good example would be, say we vacation to another island, another city, and we may learn about the foods that they eat, the music, their dance. Now we can take all of this or just choose and part which one we want to implement in our daily life. Now, this means comparing others to our own cultural view, and we become more suggestive about this experience. Now, after we have learned to appreciate all the food, the music, the dance, different things we incorporate, this moves on to our next transition, which is selectively adopting one aspect or another. Now, when we pick and choose from different ones, we can now apply it not to ourselves, we can also apply it to others, which would be the roles of the environment in our business and our small peer groups. Now, the goal of this is multiculturalism, but though it's not a final state and it's a state that just keeps going on, it gives some form of comfort in learning about others and learning to appreciate others. And it also is a lifelong learning task. Now, this openness can actually enrich your life and it makes it possible to share your experience, your values, and aspects to another person's culture that may be of value to others. But it can also mean you can actually help others learn about your culture as well for those who are willing to learn. Now, this model can actually help the new Asian culture to be more open to youth cultures and different students and persons around the world to come into appreciation of each other's perspectives. Now, this lesson and this model can actually help us learn from smaller groups that is not really recognized, let's say like the Native Americans, and the issues that they face and the challenges that they have. Now, the benefit of this is to grow beyond seeing what you know and seeing the world only in your own terms to see it in others' perspectives and perception of others. Though this appreciation doesn't necessarily mean we'll all agree or find this decision making easy or come to a standpoint at something, but it still means we should understand each other's views. And now I will pass the last few topics that we're going to talk about tonight to my colleague Aisha Hari.
Okay, thank you, Miss Phipps. Good night, everyone. So, sorry about that. My screen is sticking a bit. Okay, so I'll be discussing attitudes towards differences. So over the past years, persons act different towards different persons based on a positive or negative experience. Sometimes this can lead to persons becoming racist, homophobic, or sexist. For example, you might have been told at a young age, well, being gay is wrong, quote unquote, an abomination. So therefore, you, as an adult, you grow with that perception and you become homophobic. Dorothy Redlow created a reader scale that basically determines our measure the attitude that persons have towards others, especially homophobic. So basically, they might conduct a test to determine how homophobic someone is. This test consists, this scale consists of two stages, a negative level and a positive level. Okay, so the first stage, which is the negative level, consists of repulsion, pity, tolerance, and acceptance. And the second stage, which is the negative stage, consists of support, admiration, appreciation, and nurturance. I will now explain each stage. Okay, so the negative level of attitude, first one is repulsion. So they view persons as different and strange and crazy. Pity, they normally view others as being different and being born that way, and they're less preferred by society. So they try to install normalcy in their behavior. Tolerance, view a person as just going through a phase and it's a part of their development, and hope one day they might be out of that phase. So they tolerate those individuals. Acceptance, persons will consider that they need to accept the person differences, and but however, it does not mean that they acknowledge that person value as they. Okay, so the positive level of the attitude. Okay, so this consists of support. So individuals may work towards supporting others that are different by making them comfortable and feel accepted, knowing how society can be cruel. However, they might still be uncomfortable. Admiration, a person might admire that it takes great courage and strength for someone to be different in society. Therefore, they reflect on their own personal bias. Appreciation. Individuals begin to feel too, sorry, individuals begin to appreciate that there is diversity amongst persons and might be willing to defend negative attitude towards these individuals. Last one, nurturance. One learn to be nurturing and genuine towards person with differences and willing to advocate for these individuals. Okay, so I will give you a little story. A couple of years ago, my friend, actually a close friend to me, she told me that she had relationships with persons of the same gender. I was a bit put off, shocked, but I try accept it because I mean I if anyone knows me, um I don't like to be judgmental. I try to give everyone a chance because I mean sometimes I mean I don't know what caused her in the past to be like that, where she have to, go down that route. So I try understanding and I try not to judge because I try look past all that because she's a good, a caring person. Um, she have a great personality. So I just try look past all that, even though I might not necessarily agree with the lifestyle, but I just try to make her feel comfortable and just accept her for what she is. Okay, so on the next topic, um, culture influence in leadership behavior. Okay, so an effective rational leader involves understanding how diversity influence behavior. And persons may differ in many ways, such as personality, attitude, style, value, and belief. It is important to observe others' behavior and understand their attitude than that assuming differences based on stereotype. This might be an examination of human behavior, especially in leadership setting, and also consider cultural influence in leadership process, such as communication, conflict resolution, and decision making. Communication. Persons have different ways of communicating. Some persons may be more verbal than others, whereas some persons might be verbally reserved. Behavior may vary and influenced by cultural acceptance, which leads some persons to be direct and factual and have bold eye contact. Okay, so in different cultures, I know in some of the Asian culture, having eye contact is sometimes referred as being rude. However, it is always important to understand how different groups or culture communicate instead of considering the way of communication to be one of disrespect. Okay, so there are speech communities. These communities share their values and attitudes about different languages and practice. Conflict resolution. This is a crucial aspect in relational leadership. Persons have different ways of resolving conflict. Any changes will always bring conflict. However, a leader must always strive to maintain a positive relationship amongst group. Decision making. Decision making is based on the power of majority rule, minority opinion, and value. However, it is important that a leader should aim for persons to understand each other. Next topic. Leadership and communication. In order for one to lead effectively, they must be able to communicate with others. The way others can build trust and encourage persons to collaborate to meet a specific goal. Okay, so I'll give an example again. Currently in my workplace, there's absolutely no form of communication in that environment. I sometimes refer to the environment as being very toxic, especially with the head, the manager. I think sometimes that instead of trying to communicate and understanding persons, she overlook those and spend most of the time and other things that I will not discuss. Yeah, so communication is very crucial in any environment. Okay, so there has been emphasis on listening over talking. One must listen with empathy. Empathy requires a person to connect and understand another person by being able to see themselves understanding the other person's experience. Okay, so the picture, this is a Chinese pictogram. It's some symbols depicting listening. So you just don't listen because you have two ears. You actually listen to understand what the person is saying. Sometimes some of us are put to just sit and just listen and then give any old opinion without even sympathizing or empathizing with the person and actually giving good opinions. Assertive communication. Okay, so you can express your views and opinion in a direct manner, which is still considered to be respectful to others. Because each person have the right to be heard and a responsibility to listen. Okay, so a person might be assertive, unassertive, or aggressive. For example, I will consider myself to be somewhat unassertive, especially in the workplace. Like, for example, if I am doing um my duties, sometimes person might come and say, um, you can help me with do this, do that. So instead I tell them, okay, well, not at this moment, I am busy, and when I'm finished, I get up quickly and I run do it. And sometimes that could be a bit of a challenge sometimes, and a bit of a downfall, because sometimes person might look at you as being an easy pushover. Uh, they could easily ride over you. So something is not, it's not always a good idea. Sometimes we just got to be a bit assertive and just um tell person how it is. I mean without being rude. Relational empathy. Okay, so this is about being aware of others' feelings and understanding them. People's belief about others guide how they approach persons. And we have the self-fulfilling prophecy. This basically demonstrates that people become as you see them. So basically, in other words, what this is saying is that your expectation that you have of yourself and others may become a reality. So for example, I will use myself again. Sometimes before I even do even attempt to do something, I will start doubting myself and I will say, oh, I can't do this. I mean, I'm not good enough. I won't get this. Eventually I end up messing up, and I do not get through to do what I am set out to do. So sometimes in life, you always have to have a positive way of going about in life. I mean, sometimes it's hard, especially in this society where persons can be so judgmental and cruel, and every little thing they nitpick and tear down. Um, so just always have a positive thinking and a way of life, and it will never go wrong. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. And just to conclude, although we might have differences as individuals, sometimes it might be similar in more than one ways. Doesn't matter if you're from a different um cultural background, I have ethnicity or race. The most important thing is just trying to understand others and think about the benefits that by you understanding these individuals, how it will make things different, you know? And I will leave a little quote by John C. Maxwell. Understanding people certainly impacts your ability to communicate with others. Thank you.
So, are there any questions that anybody would like to ask? All right.